to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Wednesday, February the 19th. I am your host, Mike Oliva, flying solo tonight as we have a bunch of things to talk about in the world of the Miami Dolphins. There was some salary cap news. We got a Javon Holland update. We got some information on Tyreek Hill. And I have some more thoughts on Teron Armstead and what Miami should do with him that I want to dive into as well. So we got a few things here to discuss surrounding the Miami Dolphins. But before we get to any of that, as always, if you haven't yet, go to caneswear.com for the best Miami Dolphins apparel in the universe. That's right. Go to caneswear.com. And it's not only Miami Dolphins apparel, but they also have Florida Panthers, Miami Heat, the Florida Marlins, and of course the Hurricanes, the Gators, the Seminole, and all the college teams in Florida, the big college teams in Florida. Caneswear.com. Yes, they ship internationally as well. Caneswear is the best. If you live in South Florida, you know they are located in Davie, Florida. But if you don't and you still want to shop their store, just go to caneswear.com and their whole inventory is on the website. And it's the best. So caneswear.com. Also, Dolphins Talk Extra. If you haven't signed up yet, why haven't you? Go to patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. It's only $3 a month. We have a private message board where, it's more laid back and chill than Twitter and, Facebook and all those other platforms where it's always fighting and people jumping down your back. We have a private message board only for Dolphins Talk Extra subscribers to talk about whatever they want. And we also have bonus podcasts, some about the Dolphins, some not about the Dolphins. So you can check out all the bonus podcasts as well. We also do watch-alongs. We're going to do a game watch-along. We have 4 games right now for extra members to vote on, and Josh, Aaron, and myself will join, and we're going to watch along an old game and sort of share our thoughts on it. So we do watch-alongs, and we also do watch-alongs with the new games when it's in season, of course. And contests, we give away autographs, bobblehead dolls, and other Miami Dolphins merchandise and apparel. So go to patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. One more bit of housekeeping real quick. It's up to something season. And what I mean by up to something season means we got a few big announcements here considering DolphinsTalk.com, the website and the podcast that I will be announcing over the next couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for some big announcements that I think you're all going to enjoy regarding DolphinsTalk.com, the podcast network, and the website and everything happening. So we're up to something, and I should be able to announce that here in the next week or two, hopefully. Also, this Sunday, Tom Ernestine and myself are going to be live with a show. And for those of you who've been following along to the war that we here at DolphinsTalk.com have with 6th Rental Car, we have an update. We have an update that you're not going to want to miss. So Sunday, be on the lookout for the show Tom and myself will do all about the Dolphins, but we will have an update on the battle between DolphinsTalk.com and 6th Rental Car. All right, let's get to the show. The big news on Wednesday was that the NFL, it was released that the salary cap for 2025 is going up, and it's going up more than it was expected. So the 2025 salary cap will fall in the range of $277.5 million to $281.5 million. The number is not official yet, but it's going to be somewhere in that range. That means it's going to be up from last year by roughly 22 to 26 million. That's a higher jump than what was expected. So this is very good news for the Dolphins, who are right now over the cap. And this jump in the cap is going to be higher than expected because last year the cap was $255.4 million. And this also means here where things are going in the NFL from a business standpoint. Over the past 2 years combined, this means the salary cap is going to have increased by more than $53 million when it's all said and done. Even if that increase is on the low end, the 277.5, That's very good news for the Dolphins, and that it should make them cap compliant by the start of the new league year, even if they do no other moves as of today. If they do no other moves, obviously last week they cut Raheem Mostert and Smythe and Kendall Fuller and all that stuff. If Miami doesn't do any other moves, with this cap increasing even at the low end to 277.5, and it might be more, that would put Miami roughly 1.5 million under the cap and have them be cap compliant. So they are under the salary cap at the start of the new league year in early March. Now we know being cap compliant is great, but to be able to be active players in free agency in March, they have to do other things to get more salary cap space, and they will. But just knowing that this increase is higher than expected does help the Dolphins out greatly. And what I think it really does, and what I hope it does, I should say hope more than really, restructuring Tua's deal is obviously the big one. If they give him the max restructure, that would create 19 million of salary cap space. Hopefully this larger than expected increase takes that off the table. Now it might not. Grier and McDaniel might say, we don't care, and we just want as much money as possible, and we're going to restructure Tua's deal to open up that 19 million now. And if that means Tua's on our cap in 2028, 2029, and till the end of time, whether he's here on the team, hurt or not, we don't care. They might just do that. But I think this larger than normal increase, and yes, it's anywhere from, a few million more. It's not, drastically more, but it is more. Might have them reevaluate what they do with Tua. We'll see. Obviously, we're going to find out quick because we're going to know by within probably 2 weeks what's going to happen there, as we will with a lot of these restructures and reworks. They don't have to do them all by the first day of the new league year. That's the thing. As long as you're under the cap, you can restructure sort of as you're going. And I know a lot of fans of Dolphins sometimes get caught in this trap this time of year. Well, it's like, they should just restructure Austin Jackson, Zach Sealer, and Jordan Brooks, and this one and that one, and have all the cap space on the first day of the new league year and go shopping. Miami, if there's someone they want and they need more cap space, they might restructure. But say they signed one guy on the first day of free agency, and that takes up most of their available cap space. Well, it might be another week or two till they're interested in someone else. And it's like, we really want this guy, but we need to open up cap space. Let's redo Austin Jackson, March 24th. So they could sort of restructure as they go, because if there's guys that they can't get because they're too expensive, or if there's guys that they might not have to restructure someone for, they only want to restructure if they have to. Okay. I think fans, once again, get caught up in, since you can restructure this guy and open up cap space, do it. Well, once again, that's kicking the can down the road with some of these players. With some players, it makes sense. With a younger player, it makes sense. Someone like a Zach Sealer, if you want to restructure him, give him a small raise, lower his cap number this year, you don't expect to move on from him anytime soon. That's fine. But you might not want to restructure like in Austin Jackson with his injury history unless you really, really have to. So all the restructures don't have to be done between now and early March and the start of the new league year. They'll probably do a few. And some of the other ones that fans think they might restructure, they might wait and see, okay, we really want this guy. We're talking to his agent. We have a chance to sign. Let's restructure so-and-so now so we have money to sign player X. And that's kind of how it goes. And talking about the restructures, I'm going to put Tua to the side again, leave him off the list. Here are some of the names to keep an eye on with the restructures. These are some players who are due to make over $10 million this year on the cap, from the cap number perspective, which is really all that matters. And guys who Miami can restructure and lower their cap number to open up cap space. Jordan Brooks, a linebacker, is due around $11 million this year. He played very good last year. If they want to restructure him, lower his cap number this year, that would make sense. Zach Sealer is due 12.4. For Zach, he is severely underpaid. The only way he would agree to a restructure is if they probably extended him and gave him a small raise in total. So maybe his cap number goes down this year, but you're going to add a year or two to the deal and give him a little bump down the road. But he is someone who could be restructured. Austin Jackson is due $13.5 million. Again, this is one you might not want to rush into. Take it a little slow because Austin's been hurt a lot. I know 2 years ago he was fantastic, played every game. And last year, it's a lot of injuries with Austin Jackson. So restructuring him to open up cap space now, yeah, that's great. But when he's counting on your cap in 2028, 2020, at some point you want to move on from some of these guys and not have them count on the cap. So that's one you got to proceed with caution. The two biggies, as we know, Bradley Chubb is due $28.7 million and Teron Armstead's due $22.8. Armstead, I'm going to hold off to the end of the show because I have a much larger conversation on him. The Chubb one, it's interesting. If Jalen Phillips was healthy, Chubb would be cut. Whether it be post-June 1st or not post-June 1st, he would be cut without a shadow of a doubt because you have Jalen Phillips and Chop Robinson as your two edge rushers, and you can find more edge rushers in the draft or sign someone far cheaper than that of what you're paying Chubb. But with a Jalen Phillips injury, it makes it tricky because we don't know if Jalen Phillips will be ready by week 1 of 2025, and we do not want to go into the season again with no edge rushers. And if you cut Chubb and if Jalen's not ready until like mid-September or October, then you got Chop Robinson and nobody else. And they don't want to start the 2025 season or they ended the 2024 season. That's a bad place to be. So the Chubb one's interesting. And here's the other thing with Chubb and Armstead real quick. We know about the culture issue in Miami, guys not showing up for meetings, this, that, and the other thing. From a on-the-field perspective, those guys are not worth anywhere near that money. But from a locker room leader perspective, throwing them to the curb really leaves your locker room void of leaders. Yeah, you still have like a Ramsey, and there's a guy or two, Zach Sealer, but you don't want to throw away all your leaders. So that is going to play a factor here. You could try to restructure Chubb. He has no incentive to restructure. Why should he restructure? He's going to be one that says, no, I'm happy. I'll take my money this year. Why would he do the team a favor? It would make no sense. And you don't want to extend him either. The guy's coming off his third ACL injury. I mean, you don't want to extend a guy who once again is always hurt. So that one's going to be tricky. And the Armstead one, again, I said I'll save to the end of the show. The other one that's tricky as well is Hill. If Tyreek Hill was a normal person, you would restructure him and spread out some of this money. He is due $27.7 million. Problem is Tyreek Hill is not a normal person. He has a zillion things happening off the field. He has a court date scheduled right now for the middle of the 2025 season at some point, or who knows how that's going to tie him up when they finally get the official date there and who they play that week. We all know everything. He quit last game of the year, threw a tantrum, everything that was said. In a normal situation, it would be easy with Hill and at 27.7. He's a first ballot Hall of Fame player. Even though he's coming off a down year, he's a great player. You say, let's restructure this, lower the cap number. That'd be some money you'd be okay with kicking down the road. But because of who he is, you can't do that because you can't trust the guy. He's not trustworthy. So that, unfortunately, is a handcuff on Chris Grier and the Dolphins as well. So we'll see what they do here. I'm sure we'll have more news on this in the coming weeks. Two other news bits here real quick. First one sort of ties into Hill. So let me start with here. Cam Wolf of the NFL Network has both of these. Cam Wolf of the NFL Network says he isn't 100% sure that Hill won't be traded at some point. So take it he's spoken to people in the Dolphins, and he can't say with 100% certainty that Tyreek Hill will not be traded this offseason. Again, as I said on the show this past week with Josh Mosley yesterday. No, it was actually the show on 560 WQAM with Zach Krantz and Douglas Durong. If anything happens with Hill, it's going to happen post-June 1st for a couple reasons. Number one, for the salary cap implication for the Dolphins post-June 1st makes it much more manageable if you are going to move on from him. It's number one. Number two, whatever team's trading for him, why would they want to part with a pick in this draft in a few months when you can wait until after the draft and probably still get Hill and part with a 2026 pick? Because for Miami, it makes more sense to trade them after June 1st, which is after the draft. And let's say you're a team. I'm just throwing out a few teams. Like, who needs wide receivers? Pittsburgh or the Chargers. Those are two teams that need wide receiver. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Los Angeles Chargers, you're going to be like, wait, I'll keep my picks this year. I'm going to take guys in this draft. And then after the draft, yeah, I want Hill. I'll give you a 2026 second or a 2026 third, whatever you're going to get for him. So for the team trading for him, it makes sense to do it after June 1st. For the Dolphins, it makes sense to do it after June 1st. It would have to be a blowaway deal for Miami to trade him pre-June 1st, because if you trade him pre-June 1st, they have to eat $28 million of dead money, and that's a lot. Even if they were in good salary cap space situation, that's a lot. So I think post-June 1st, for anything with Hill and per Cam Wolf, he cannot say with certainty that Hill will not be traded. Now, most people think it's unlikely, but unlikely is not impossible. So that's, once again, something to monitor, but probably closer to monitor when we get to June in the spring of what happens with Hill. Some happens with Hill. It's going to happen between June 1st and August 31st. Why August 31st? That's the day in Hill's contract that Dolphins have to write him a big fat check. And after August 31st, it literally makes no sense to trade him because you've already paid him a large amount of money. Where if you trade him between like June, July, or the first part of August, whatever team acquires him has to then write that big fat check, not the Dolphins. So once we get to August 31st, odds are Miami won't trade him because they've already written this big fat check to him that he's due that day. So June 1st to August 30th is kind of the window for Hill if Miami's going to do something, most likely. The other thing Cam Wolf reported was that the Miami Dolphins will not use the franchise tag or the transition tag on Javon Holland. Not a shock. Now it's just been confirmed and official per Cameron Wolf of the NFL Network. Great reporter, does outstanding work. And it makes sense because the franchise tag for Holland is $19.6 million. And that means right now, Miami, who is roughly $1.5 million under the cap, would have to clear another $19 million or so just to put the tag on Javon Holland. And again, that's just clearing out $19 million to put the tag on him. And then if you want to sign somebody else, then you still have to start clearing off more cap space. Makes it impossible. The transition tag's not much better. They'd have to clear $15.6 million on the cap to put that tag on him. Again, they just don't have the cap space. And I mean, can they do it? Yeah, but you're doing every bad thing. Like you're cutting, you have to give two of the max restructure. You'd have to cut Armstead. You probably have to cut Chubb. Like they have to do every bad thing that you don't want to see them do to make that work. And it's just not worth it. Not that Pollen's not a very good player. He's a very good player. He's young. His best season, which is shocking, was under Vic Fangio because it sounded like Javon Holland hated Vic Fangio from everything that he tweeted after Vic was let go by the Dolphins, or they mutually agreed to part ways. This past year, Holland wasn't as good, and I know he'll say, which is true, he did play hurt for the second half of the year, which is great. You like to see that, a guy play through injury, but he also did not play his best football in 2024 either. And if you're the Dolphins, right now you have one safety under contract in Patrick McMorris. Jordan Poyer's not coming back, so you got to get one starter there, and they have to get two starters. So with the $19 million that you just have to give him, you might be able to sign two safeties to start and fill both of those spots instead of just paying Holland, and you still have a void at your other safety, and then you have a void at backup safety. So it makes sense not to give Holland the money. And I know Javon Holland, when I had Josh Moser from WSVN 7 on the show last week from Radio Row at the Super Bowl, he said he spoke to Javon, and in not so many words, he's going to the highest bidder. So there's that. And then he gave another interview a few days ago where he said pretty much the same thing, where it's like, he's excited to be a free agent and pretty much he's going to look out for himself and his family and all that stuff, which I don't blame him. He should. All NFL players should take the most money. I get it. I totally get it. But so Holland most likely won't be back. I mean, look, Chris Grier, he always surprises me. He could do something crazy. But here's the deal. It makes no sense for the tag because that's a 1-year thing, and that's sort of just like a Band-Aid. If Grier could work out a long-term deal where the cap number in year one is relatively low and his cap number would go up, 2026, 2027, 2028, when guys like Hill won't be, or Chubb won't be, or Armstead. Like, I guess he could make it work that way. It's just going to be a challenge, and we'll see what happens, though. All right, before I get to my final topic of today's show, quick shout out to everyone listening at finheaven.com. Everyone go to finheaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also, a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan Facebook page, run by the great, talented, smart, handsome, and clairvoyant Carlos Hernandez. That's right. If you're on Facebook, please be sure you are a member and part of the I Am a Miami Dolphins Fan Facebook page. Go there right now, like it, follow it, be a part of their Facebook page. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Audible, Podbean, Podchaser, or one of the other hundreds of platforms are on, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. If you leave us a 5-star rating and a positive, keyword positive, comment on our Apple Podcast page, I will give you a shout out and read it on an upcoming show. And if you're watching or listening on YouTube, smash that like button right now. Take a second, smash it. put up a comment. I will try to respond to all comments in the YouTube comment section, and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. Like I said, it's up to something season. We got some big announcements you're not going to want to miss, that you're going to want to be a part of. So make sure you're subscribed to wherever you're listening to this show on whichever platform. Okay, last topic. Teron Armstead. I've been thinking a lot here about, what Miami should do with Teron Armstead the past few days. I know I live a real exciting life, you can tell. No, but seriously, because he's one of the, with a lot of these players, if Miami should restructure or cut them, like Jake Bailey, cut him, take all the cap savings. Alec Ingold, love the guy, cut him, take the cap. Like, there's not much thought. It's like easy stuff, low-hanging fruit, boom, boom, boom. This Armstead one, though, is tricky. It's tricky in a lot of ways in that he plays a key position. When he does play and he's healthy, he's elite. But there is the downside of things, of the injuries, the age, and some other things as well. So after going back and forth on this and weighing out the pros and the cons, I've come to a conclusion of what I think Miami should do. And of course, no one's asking me, but it's my conclusion of what I think the smart thing Miami should do is. And I think the Miami Dolphins have to move on from Teron Armstead, and they should cut him. Now, they can cut him two ways. They can cut him now as a pre-June 1st cut, and they can cut him now but give him a post-June 1st designation. And it's a big deal which way you do it. If Miami cuts him with a pre-June 1st tag, or just cut him now pre-June 1st, he will count $18.5 million of dead money on the cap, but it gives Miami $4.26 million of salary cap space they can use now in March to sign good free agent players. So you cut him now, and yes, you're going to eat $18.5 million, but after that, he's off your cap forever, and you have $4.26 million to use now in March, when we get to March and the start of free agency, to go out there and sign when the good players are available to be signed. The other way you can cut them is you cut him now, but you put the post-June 1st designation on him. And what that does to your cap is totally different. You only eat, instead of 18.5, you're only eating 7.8 million of dead cap money this year. And you do get 15 million of salary cap space that you cannot use now. You have to wait to June 1st. And we know come June 1st, all the good players signed in March and April. June 1st are your older players who are, you're getting them 1-year deals, who their best days are long behind them, who might be injury prone. And it's like that 15 million in June 1st. It's great for the future, not going to help you win games in 2025. So I would cut them, and I would take the cap hit this year, because when you cut them post June 1st, not only is it only 7.8 of dead cap this year, then the rest of it's going to be on your cap in 2026. So even though he's not here in 2026, he's still counting against your cap. And that's the game the Dolphins have to get away from. Okay. They have to get away from that game. They have to take their medicine, cut guys, do not label them post June 1st cuts. And, because that has hampered this team in the past. And I think the chickens have kind of come home to roost. And I don't want to see that with a lot of these guys. Now, with Armstead, if they did want to do it post June 1st, he would be the only one I'd do it with, because of this. Yes, you get 15 million post June 1st that you can use, and that would let you sign your entire draft class, and all the money left over after that you can use as working capital for the entire 2025 season. Obviously, when you go into a season, guys are going to get hurt. You're going to have to sign guys in October, November, into December to replace them. Maybe you can make a trade at the trade deadline to add a player, so you want to have salary cap space available for that. So if they do it with him, it's not going to help them in March sign quality players, but I would get it, because look, that draft's the last week of April. You don't have to sign any of the rookies until training camp starts, essentially. So then June 1st, you can start signing your rookies and use that 15 million to sign your rookie class. And then whatever left over, I don't know, what would it be, 7-8 million or so, 6 million. You can use that as your working capital for the 2025 season to sign guys, which you're going to have to sign them throughout the season and stuff like that. So I would understand, but he'd be the only one I do it with this offseason that way. I would not cut, like, say someone like Chubb and Armstead are each cut. I would not do them both post June 1st. I think that's just suicide, because you're just kicking a can down the road, making 2026 salary cap going to be just as bad as it was this year. And you don't want that. You just don't want that. You want to be in a good financial spot here eventually. But that's one thing. But so I know some of you are asking, well, that's a lot of the money aspect of it. Why do you want him gone? Why are you cutting him? And the answer is simple. Teron Armstead at this point in his career is a progress blocker. Armstead played in 15 games this past year, but I think there was 2 games he left relatively early in the game. So he technically started, but he didn't really play. So he really only played in 13 of 17 games. And at this, with all of his injuries and all of his past at this age, you're not going to get more than 13 out of him. And that's like the high watermark. You're probably looking at like 9 or 10 games that he will play in moving forward, if that even. And you're going to pay this guy, even if he restructures and takes a bit of a haircut, which again, why would he restructure? But he might take a little bit of a haircut. You're still paying him a lot of money for a guy who most likely, common sense, folks, only going to give you 9 or 10 games. Now, granted, those 9 or 10 games are going to be very good, but you're only getting 9. What do you do for the other games? Well, I know some of you are saying, well, just play Patrick Paul. But that's where he's blocking Patrick Paul's progress. Patrick Paul was a second-round pick. I, like you, have no friggin' idea if Patrick Paul is any good as an offensive tackle. But if Armstead's here, we will never find out if Patrick Paul is any good as an offensive tackle. The worst thing for the 2025 Miami Dolphins and for Patrick Paul is if Armstead's ready to start week 1 and he plays 3 weeks, then he's out for a month, play Patrick Paul for a month. Then Patrick Paul, you're now back on the bench. Armstead goes out there for a couple weeks. Then he gets hurt again, misses a few more games. Paul, go back out there. You're going to play 2 more weeks. Oh, Armstead's back. Put him back. Paul's on the bench for a month. Oh, Armstead's hurt again. Paul, like Patrick Paul, we have to know if he's any good. And the only way we're going to find out is if he's on the field each and every week, taking all the snaps, consistent snaps, and not shuffling back and forth between backup and starter. And the reason we have to know this, because he was a second-round pick. Okay, you have to put value on the guys you pick early in this draft. If he was a 4th or 5th round pick, I'd go, who cares? Who cares? But a second-round pick, we picked him with the thought in mind, he will replace Armstead. But having Armstead in front of Paul again for another year just only hurts Patrick Paul's progress. And it means we might be wasting another second-round pick because we're not going to know if Paul's any good or not when he's in and out of the lineup playing sporadically. Okay? He needs to get consistent reps. And yes, if Armstead's cut and you move on from him, Miami does need to get a 3rd offensive tackle. But I think, because again, Austin Jackson's always hurt. We have to factor that in. And we don't know if Patrick Paul's any good. But here's where I would, if I were Chris Grier, I'd strongly consider. At pick 13, there's going to be a chance you can get a very good offensive lineman. And what I mean by offensive lineman is not someone like Patrick Paul who can only play tackle, can't play guard. There are a few offensive tackles who will be on the board of 13 who are offensive tackles in college, but can also shift inside the guard. Kelvin Banks from Texas is one. And he's projected to go anywhere from 8 to 14-ish. So he might be on the board for Miami. The other kid from Missouri, he's one. And I think there's you got the kid from Oregon. You got the kid from Ohio State. So there's a few of those guys. Take one at 13. You need a starting guard anyways. You pencil them in as starting guard. And if Patrick Paul absolutely sucks, stinks on toast, then you can take that 1st-round pick who has been not a Patrick Paul 2nd-round offensive tackle, a 1st-round, top half of 1st-round offensive tackle, and you swing him out to left tackle, which is where he played in college anyways. And then you have Patrick Paul insurance. You have your 3rd offensive tackle on the roster, who's very good, you hope, if he's picked in the top half of round 1. And you have insurance. And your tackles are Paul, Austin Jackson, and say, just for example's sake, Kelvin Banks. Just for example. Could be anybody else. So, and that's what I would do, because if you do, worst case scenario, have to move Kelvin Banks out to offensive tackle, it'd be easier to find. I don't laugh. It'd be easier to find a guard to fill his spot than it would be to find an offensive tackle. Now we know for Chris Grier that's always been an issue, but you get my overall point that it'd just be easier. So that's what I would do if I were in charge here, which again I am not, because as long as Armstead's here, he is just gonna be a progress blocker. And Patrick Paul's a second-round pick. We have to know. The only way we're going to know is to give him consistent reps week in, week out, and let him play. And from the little bit he played last year, Paul, he showed some promise. I'm not going to say he was awful. He was. I'm not going to say he was great because he wasn't. He was okay. He looked like a second-round pick rookie who played sporadically. But hopefully, if you give him a full season of OTAs, mini camp, a full training camp as a starter, he can develop into a quality, good starting left tackle. And that's what we want, and that's what we need to know. But as long as Armstead's here, that is going to be an obstacle for everyone involved. So between the salary cap savings, whether it's pre-June 1st and you get 4-point-something million to spend now in March, or post-June 1st where you get $15 million June 1st and you can use that throughout the year and sign your draft class, that's 2 pluses, whichever way you want to go there. And plus 2, take away the roadblock in front of Patrick Paul and let him, take his spot as a starting left tackle. And let's see if he sinks or swims, and let's see how it goes. So after all this thought, my thought is Teron Armstead needs to go. Now, I will say this, and I sort of said this at the top of the show when it comes to Chubb and Armstead. Mike McDaniel right now is not in a good spot as a head coach. We heard everything, guys showing up late for meetings, the fines didn't work. He needs locker room leaders. And Armstead's one of those guys. So letting him go, you're losing a locker room leader. But that's why Mike McDaniel's an NFL head coach and making big bucks. Win back your locker room. You shouldn't be forced to keep anyone to win over your locker room. Get those guys to respect you one way or another, either by being overly sweet and nice like you have been, or if you have to do a little bit of a 180 and crack the whip. We can't keep and pay someone because Mike McDaniel needs locker room leaders. So I would not factor that in here, but I do understand it is a factor that I'm sure they are talking about when they're trying to determine what to do with Teron Armstead. All right, that's all for today's show. Everyone, be sure to follow us on social media at Dolphins Talk, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok, wherever, at Dolphins Talk. Check out the website, DolphinsTalk.com. A bunch of new content up, a bunch of new articles. You don't want to miss them. If you missed my show yesterday with Josh Moser, the podcast, check it out. That was a great show. And again, this Sunday, myself and Tom Ernestine are going to have a new podcast out, and we will tell you how the situation with 6th rental car was resolved and who came out on top in this battle. So the conclusion to that, for those of you who are interested in following along, that'll be on Sunday. Dolphins Talk Extra, patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. Have a new contest. I'm going to start probably either, let's just say Thursday or Friday. I probably won't have time to get to it tonight on Wednesday evening, but you're going to want to check that out. Sign up $3 a month. If folks, it's $3 a month, I guarantee you're going to have a blast. Because yes, it's behind a paywall, but you're going to have a blast with the other Miami Dolphins fans who are paying their $3 a month in the private message board with the bonus shows, the interactive podcast we do where you, the listeners, can come on with Josh, myself, Aaron. We do happy hour shows. We do watch alongs. We have so much interactive content. And like I said, we give away autographs and prizes. It's awesome. Patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. Everyone, have a great Wednesday evening. Have a great Thursday for listening on Thursday. The weekend is almost here. Let's go into it with good vibes and positive energy. Everyone, we'll talk to you again after a while. Folks, don't forget, we must put an end to highway profanity.